Yo, so I just want to point out this is therapy for us all. Like week in, week out. We look forward to it. Listen,
Fellas,
it's
it's
just
gonna be one of them nights.
it's gonna be. I'm telling you. I still don't have a soundboard. You said I had to switch to the Nanu Nanu headset. What's going on, fellas? Man, another Tuesday night at 9, man. Prototype Dad back for the 2025. How y'all feeling tonight?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like
Full cast too.
I feel like Russell Wilson when he
Here we
when he
go.
left the
So here we go. You gonna start out with that?
Too soon. Too
Don't be,
soon.
don't be talking
Too
about the step,
soon. Too soon.
Pittsburgh stepdad. We be all right next year. We're going to the Bowl next year.
if they resign that dude, I'm getting a Joe Burrow jersey, dog. It's over
Nah,
with. I'm leaving.
we don't
I'm
want you.
leaving.
You
That's
ain't from
fine.
Pittsburgh anyway. You from DC.
Yo, man, I'm more Pittsburgh than
Then who?
Swissvale ever would be.
I don't think so, man.
Let's not start geographic because technically you're not even in the city, brother.
I don't gotta be. But I'm Metro.
That man been suburb forever.
Greatest life to live.
They pave y'all streets when it snows out there, but
Nah.
No, they don't.
But yeah, man, no, we had a heated up conversation, man, in the group chat, man, just talking about economics and where black people come from, you know, over the decades, you know what I'm saying? I can't believe it's like 2025. That sounds crazy. Like, y'all understand, like George Jetson will be born next year. Like that's how crazy it is. Like, you know what I'm saying? So by the time he's middle aged, you know what I mean, high rises and floating cars, you know what I mean, it's going to be a norm. We already got half of the stuff the Jetsons got, you know what I mean? But just to dive into the topic, you know what I'm saying, let me kind of move something around real quick. There we go. We're gonna go in this order. Just to dive into the topic, man. What do you think some of the key social and cultural factors were in shaping like black families in, you know, the 1900s and 1920s, and you know what I'm saying, like shortly after slavery? What shaped us then?
we
I'm
going in
assuming
order.
I'm first. Yeah, I'm assuming I'm first. That's why you swapped it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the same stuff that the kind of most families have. One, they're a nuclear family, like they were together, and then they understood they had a certain level of values and they had a certain level of I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. They had a certain level of survival. They knew they needed each other to survive. You know what I mean? Like I think we'll probably get into this later. Like they weren't even really worried about legacy. Like it was like, I'm gonna have these kids because I need more hands to help me work. Like that was what they were doing back then. Like it wasn't really like, oh, I want to make sure my name goes on, and like they was too busy surviving. They weren't even thinking about thriving. They were just worrying about survival and what can make their life a little bit easier. And having kids helped with that in a lot of cases early in the 1900s. So, a lot of the stuff that we talk about now is first world problems. And the reason we got away from it is because we got away from those foundational things that, we started on.
What you got, Hit? What shaped us back, shortly after slavery? What shaped the black community then?
I think the same thing that shaped us is the same thing that cripples us today. The struggle, right? They they uh they were made because of the struggle. All the things that Mo just mentioned, the togetherness, the family, the values, um, the way they moved and they were trying to rebuild, right? They were trying to survive. There was, you know what I mean? They got lynchings. You got, you know what I mean? The fact that they were pretty much treated like second class citizens, right? So they got to prove their worth. They got to prove their smarts. Like it was always a struggle, right? You know what I mean? We had to leap. You know what I mean? When they had to walk, right? There was always that struggle that helped us build what we became. But the fact that we never left that struggle mindset is what's crippling us now because it's really hard to grow and expand when you're always trying to survive. You know what I mean? Like survival is what turns people, you know what I mean, what turns off uh thinking and you start moving off of animal instincts. You know what I mean? Like if I see you with a whole lot of money and I know that I don't that rent's coming up and rent's due, then I'm going to get that money from you. Not
Did you,
because it's nothing wrong, because I'm trying to survive. You know what I'm saying? And I
did you
justify it
say
through survival
did you say it turns off faking or thinking?
thinking,
Okay.
right? Because that's what separates us from the animals, right? Is reason, right? We have reasoning. They do everything off instinct, right? But we have reasoning. We have the frontal lobe. We can, you know what I mean? Decide. But when you're becoming a struggle and surviving, then you're just doing things off instinct, right? I'm going to get it from you because I got to eat. But I think that's what brought them together, man, was the fact that the struggle was real, but they found, you know what I mean? I think they found the diamond in the rough with the struggle, and they was able to build from that.
What you got, Leifer? What molded the black community in shortly after slavery?
So I'm gonna slightly agree with both of them. I think what definitely molded us and and help keep us together and help us strive is the struggle and the fact that um they had been through so much. And one of the things that was keeping them alive is the fact that they had each other through it all. So when they did get some semblance of freedom and they were able to do some things on their own for themselves, I think that kind of you know put them in a position where they could propel as long as these outliers weren't in the way. And to the point where Hit said he kind of thinks that's the same thing that is making us is becoming a negative on that front today. Like I slightly disagree because I think what has become um what is the biggest hindrance in our community is the comfortability. And I think it's not necessarily the struggle, because the struggle, if you look at the struggle, yeah, and you look at a lot of, and I'm going to say a lot of, and I don't necessarily have the numbers or the statistics, but I think Deion Sanders said it when he was talking about recruiting, certain people or certain guys to the team. He was looking at those who came from single mother households and those who, had dealt with a little bit of struggle, and they were, they wanted a little bit more. They had a little bit more fire. It was the difference between um, those who were hungry and those who could just eat. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not really hungry, but I could eat. The difference between those who really wanted it and had that hunger. And I think that's been the biggest difference is people got to some level of comfortability and they kind of lost the fight. They don't want to lose their level of comfortability. When there's different struggles and things happening, and when there's times where we could come together and we could band together and fight and support each other, we don't because you fear getting being ostracized by the bigger class or whatever. And I think that becomes the biggest problem um, in our community. Not necessarily that we're still have this struggle mentality, because out of the struggle becomes, you know what I mean? What they say, the pressure creates the diamonds.
Hey, I would push back on that part as far as the struggle, because I think we don't use the struggle the same word at this point. It's become it's it's become almost entitlement, right? It's become black privilege, right? Because you have and I don't, then it's a problem, and you should give to me, or you should allow me to do this because you have and I don't, and I'm still struggling. So I think we just changed the wording a little bit, but I think we're still going. I think it's still a struggle. It's just I think it's just morphed now until, because I've been struggling so long, you know what I mean? I'm entitled to certain things.
Um, fun fact, I bring up the 1920s, because that's when black people were the most wealthiest. We owned 14% of the land mass compared to today where we own like less than 1% of the land. Um, how you think that's happened? How did we go from 14% to almost nothing? What you got, Mo?
So I guess I want to kind of clarify that, or get clarity on that, I guess is a better way of putting it. When you say like, yeah, I mean, they own 14% because they were farmers, but they were starving. Like, so that like that wasn't the issue, that like the land didn't have as much value to them. Like they weren't able to capitalize off of it. So like, or there were other reasons too, like how I won't even get into that part of it, but like that's just a really interesting statement. Like, I don't think that we were wealthier because we had land. I don't think that. Like, I think that's a generalized statement. Like, because if you can't sell your crops, like, you just got a bunch of dead crops. Like, that doesn't make you wealthy.
Here's the question: where did they get the money to purchase that land from in the first place?
I mean, there's a couple different ways. Like,
I mean, I guess then some less regulations, right? Hey, we taking
no. Yeah, that's why I go say there's a couple ways that I didn't want to get into. Like I mean, let's keep, okay. You know what? Let's keep it a buck. There's always been an underworld to this country, and the same way we talk about like, oh, most women that are the wealthiest women got their money from divorce and stuff like that. Like it was a component of that too. Like a lot of people inherited land because they slept with Massa and they gave it in Miss Sarah. Once Miss Sarah died, they just gave it to her. You know what I mean? Because they were the concubine for whatever. Or, there was a black man that, was doing whatever, that he was able to get enough money to where he worked it off to where he bought it for way too much than it was really worth. But regardless of how they got it, was like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I believe that we were wealthier then than we are now. I don't know if that's a true statement as a whole.
I mean, I would say land equals wealth, but on the other side, you're basically saying we've always been stuck in the monarch.
Meaning what? What does that? What do you mean by
that? Because you said we basically got the land from grandma, from what she was doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, we came here as an underclass. Yeah. We've always been the underclass since we've got here, or since the colonizers came and took it over. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so, but like even today, like there wasn't like if you were to go and look at the black farmers right now, like, would you say they're more wealthier than you, or probably not? Yes. Like, I mean, like, yes. Yeah, probably. Like,
I would say if you ask them,
yeah, like, would you trade your life for theirs?
If I had their skill set, yes.
I mean, like a lot of
are we swapping knowledge? Are we swapping knowledge base? Yes.
I mean, go
ahead.
I honestly, I think that's the biggest trick that they played on us, man, is that for some reason they changed history to make it look like black people were so inept, like we were just so like down. And you if you look at like the visuals, You see the woman with the big holy dress on with the flat no shoes, and the kids looking all crazy. But black people were wealthy. Like I think that's the image that they portray, because you got to think of it like this, right? The black people were the ones that was driving the industry. They did all the work. You know what I mean? So when everything ended, a lot of the slave masters had to keep on and pay the black people because they didn't know how to do the work. It was the black people doing the work, and they managed the other black. That's how a lot of them gained their wealth, because when the slavery ended, they became partners in the cotton trade, and even in the industry. When they went up north, they became like in textiles and everything else. Black people was running that, but they paint the history and make us look like we were on the streets, but we were running a lot of the industries. Similar to, you think about how the Mexicans came over and started running the construction game. For a while, they wanted us to feel like Mexicans weren't making no money. They were just the grunt workers. And then you started seeing them in these houses, you know what I'm saying, pulling up in these trucks. And then you finally realize, like, oh, damn, they are making money, because they were doing the work. And now the I want to say the European, the whoever was the manager had to depend on them, because they knew, because they were the ones that were doing the work.
I feel like that's a small ass percentage, because
that's what I was gonna say. I hate that I'm having technical difficulties. Because that's not true. That's like saying right now, like the Mexicans are the skilled workers and they're rich. Like they're not the richest. Like there's maybe one for every 100 that is even above the poverty line. So like a lot of it I missed because my Wi-Fi's out.
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
There was a few. It definitely wasn't mass, because, like I said, it definitely wasn't in mass, because what was happening is, once they became free, they put in laws that say that if you didn't have a place to live, or if you didn't have a job, then you would be arrested. So then once you got arrested, then they were able to put you back into slavery and put you basically back into slavery, and have you working for the same people you were just working for free again. So, and now maybe some people were able to circumvent that and, you know what I mean, backdoor that in some way. But in masses, that's literally how, after the Emancipation Proclamation, folks was putting back into slavery, because they put in place all these rules and regulations that you had to adhere to. But after you get freed, they ain't got nowhere. Okay, you don't got nowhere to live. Okay, you don't got no job. Okay, boom. So, like I said, there might have been some level and some numbers, but it sure wasn't the greatest number.
So
there were vagrancy laws. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about vagrancy laws. So once they had the vagrancy laws, and once they would get you up on that, that's when they would take away all your rights as a citizen, the 13th Amendment, and then you were basically back into slavery. And then you were working for free.
How do we explain only 1%, right, was making the money? How do we explain that they own the percentage of the land that they own? It couldn't coincide with just 1% just making the money. It had to be scaled, right? Because to own that much land and to have that much property, there's no way only 1% was making money. It doesn't make sense.
I'm not even saying that it was 1%. Like, so for example, how we're talking about that, let's say it was 14%. I don't know where that stat comes from, but let's say it was 14%. Like, really, that would just be our pro rata share. Like, we're only 13% of the population. Like, I think it should be like more along those lines, right? But with that being said, at the time, I guess that was kind of a ideal of wealth back then, was the ownership of land. But like now, like, I mean, a lot of times people, like, they don't want to farm the land. It doesn't have as much value. So that's why, like, people are selling off their family farms and they're selling off the land, because it doesn't have as much value to them. And it's not, quote unquote, the ideal of wealth that it used to be. That's the biggest thing that I think that's why we've lost. The fact that we got tricked, or we got the banana in the tailpipe for our land, our family's land, that's something different. Or the fact that they tricked us out of it. I think that doesn't necessarily speak to our lack of wealth or our loss of wealth. It's just that we didn't value it because we weren't able to capitalize off it the way we thought we should have.
But don't you think the capitalization of selling that land gives you the ability to go ahead and have capital for other ventures that we now don't have, right? Because at this rate, I think we're the highest in debt out of all cultures. You know what I mean? Like, I think we have the most debt out of everybody.
Yo,
That
so
goes hand in hand. We have no land, so we have the most debt.
It's my turn. I feel it's my turn.
You got it.
Nah, I mean, because I didn't want to say that was my goal. I wanted to you know what I mean, because I basically what I was going to say definitely coincides definitely what you just said, right? You asked, the question was, how do we get to this point, right, where we don't own anything, right, but we're the biggest consumers on the planet? It's because they turned us into consumers, right? They just turned us to consumers and not producers, right? They inhibit our ability to produce, and all they do is throw things at us for us to consume. So back then, they were producers, not consumers. Like, you ever see? So I had a couple buddies, right, that like went without working for a while, and you would think like, damn, this dude's gonna struggle, like he's not working, but they had like the time of their lives not working. And from not saying that they had some money, but it wasn't the amount of money coming in, right? But what they did was they budgeted and they stopped spending money, and they were able to live comfortably, right, off a small portion of what they were making because they weren't consuming as much. And that's another trick that we got played on, was that they were tricked to become consumers. Like 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 we got the most debt, the least amount of assets, but we consume more than most countries, right? And so, like, how do you do that, right? And if you look at the long term effects of it, is you go from owning stuff to just renting to leasing, right? To buy here, pay here's. Like, they really tricked us out of most of our money. And for a long time, again, we were ostracized from most banks. So we wasn't even in the banking system. And we just saved and bought what we were going to buy. And now we're like the biggest, we're preyed on the most, like crazy APRs. You know what I mean? You need this car, 25% APRs. Like, they really prey on us, like, strategically, so that we won't own anything and we owe everybody and we spend the most money. That's why we don't own nothing.
I mean, I think you're right. But again, like, I still think that was a choice. Like, that was a choice that we made. The fact that we get, like, because I think in the beginning you were saying like they made us. They didn't make us do anything. Like, all they did is they opened the floodgates to integration, and we thought white ice was colder, so we were like, "Oh, let me get some of that." And then what ended up happening is we played ourselves. But to your point, like, I mean, if you don't spend what you don't have, chances are you'll be okay. But now that we have subprime lending and what's it called, Affirm, like, if you using Affirm, like, it's probably a bad deal. Like, split it up into 4 payments.
But
that's our problem.
Let's take it a little bit deeper though. If we don't spend what we don't have, right? Because most of us wouldn't have what we have without education, right? So how do we even get educated without spending what we don't have?
Yo, but so so if we going back to 1920, right?
We're all up and down the timeline at this point,
right? But they were least educated, and they owned the most. Is education? So how important is it to be educated? To be globally educated, or is it better to be educated in the field that you're in? You know what I mean, or to be a master of the field that you're in. So most of them didn't go to a formal college, right? But they were
most of them didn't finish high school. Most of them didn't finish high school.
Most of them didn't have any school, right? But they were still masters in their field. So what is that saying? Like, about how what we're sold on as far as the educational system?
We all know the CEOs are probably the dumbest people in the companies. You know what I'm saying? So they have the reason. I wouldn't say the CEO, but the owner. You know what I'm saying? He who has the gold make the rules. You know what I'm saying? Like, if somebody already has the capital, they don't have to be the smartest person in the room. They're okay. They sign a check, so they're okay saying, "Hey, I'm dumb. You're smarter than me. You're smarter than me. You're smarter than me. Everybody go work." You know what I'm saying? So with no resources, and then you flip it on. It's like, oh, knowledge. What do you say? Knowledge is power. You got to go to school. You got to get educated. You know what I'm saying? And we spend all this time getting educated to go work for somebody that's not smarter than us.
But that's what I'm saying, though. that's just a part of like the brainwashing that happened. Like it went from like it became almost like you looking down on people that worked in the field or people that worked on the cars or the people that was, you know what I mean, that was in the factories. You was like, oh, I'm educated. You know what I mean? And so now you look down upon them people and you left the neighborhood. So I think that's a part of like the I think that's part of the brainwashing that we receive, man. Like you're supposed to go to college, get a good job, and retire. You know what I mean? But is that really the right way?
So I think you're right because it still goes on today. Like literally, like people that are in the trades make plenty of money, but they're not looked on or looked at as prestigious or as sophisticated as somebody who might have a 4-year degree. Like they could make the same amount, but because of the aesthetic, they're not looked at in the same light. But I mean, again, hey, welcome to the new year. It's where you stand is determined by where you sit. Like if you're looking from a capitalism perspective, it's about how much guns and butter do you have? Like, but if you just want to look like you rich and pretend, yeah, then you could be like, oh, well, look, I have a master's degree and I have a PhD. Not even talking about did you got 400,000 in student loan? Like I've never heard nobody say that. Like I got a PhD, but I'm drowning in student loan. I've never heard nobody say that when they're giving their accolades. Like no one's ever said that. And I think that's part of the problem. Like in a capitalistic society where money is the scoreboard, right? Or assets, you know what I mean? And if you don't have that, you can't eat your degrees. So, and I think, that's the trick that they played on us. And when we bought it, hook, line, and sinker. But to your original question, Vic, was it's a calculated risk. So in order for you to be able to get the opportunity to work in those avenues and stuff like that, like I personally feel I could have did this stuff without having a degree or ever going to college, but I wouldn't have got the opportunity had I not took out those loans and did the things that I did in order to even be able to walk through that door. So that's why I did it. So it was a calculated risk.
Lou, you got something to say?
No, I was just about yeah. I was saying it underneath my breath, but I was just gonna say a lot of the college and things like that, especially if you're going to grad school, isn't even about the education at that point. It's about the relationships. So a lot of those relationships you probably wouldn't even create or build if you didn't go. So you're really paying, to go and make those relationships. I think like a lot of the connection of things that I make right now are really based off of those relationships that I built there. And a lot of the opportunities that come across my desk now are based off of those opportunities that I built, or those relationships that I built there. And you know what I mean? It's almost priceless. But you're right, man. They nobody touts that student loan, but I do hear about it even more often now, even with lawyers and doctors and stuff like that, because everybody always, oh, be a lawyer, be a doctor, or be this, be that, and they don't understand that, you know what I mean? That, all of them aren't making bank like that, and even the ones that are making bank got those ridiculous student loans that they have to pay back. So, you know what I mean? You kind of got to choose what you want, you know what I mean? Because I see a lot of people in those trades now who are making, really good money, but they're not, they're thought of as blue collar workers, but they're making really good money, but they're not accepted in certain rooms.
I want to switch gears a little bit and kind of talk about how, like, in a competitive nature, how was the Asian community able to eclipse us? If you think about at one point, they were just as slaves as us, right? Indentured servants, building railroads, look down just as bad as they was looked down on. We was in the same thing. You know what I'm saying? So how are they able to surpass us and we've been here longer?
One, they weren't the primary target of the oppression. That's one. Two, they had a certain level of unity. And three, they used us as their human shields. So a lot of the stuff that, whether it be DEI, civil rights, all that stuff, like while we were fighting for that, they just got to run their race. And then the thing that's is really embarrassing because it actually just came to head recently when they kind of changed up the affirmative action. I know they were the face of it, but really it was some white person that actually put them up to it. But so they were blaming black people for not being able to get into Ivy Leagues and stuff like that, right? And what ended up happening was they were like, this isn't fair. It should all be on merit. We're the ones that's getting the GPAs, and we're the one that's getting the high SAT scores. We should be able to get it in mass. So they've actually changed that affirmative action. It's not necessarily ethnicity based anymore. And you don't get preferential treatment for being a minority or whatever. It's just supposedly it's based off that, but they haven't changed the legacy component of it. And they found that they've been at a lower percentage because you the new N-word now. Like, that's what they figured out. Like, instead of eating fried chicken, these N-words just eat rice. Like, that's all it was. Like, that's what they figured out. Like, because they're like, oh, we're what they call it, the model minority. Them and Indians, that's what they were thinking. They just end up getting their N-word wake-up call, because this ship is going to go with you or without you. Like, they're trying to use you up for your knowledge and your creativity. But when you try to get more than whatever they feel is fair, your fair share, that's when they slap you down. They're like, no, that's not what it is. So that's how they were able to surpass us. Because at one point, you know what I mean, when they tried to do too much, or when they felt that they had leverage, it was like during the Korean conflict and stuff like that, and during World War II, they had put them in those camps and took all their resources and stuff like that. And we actually did pay them back for some of that. So let's keep that in mind too. They got a check for some of that stuff that happened. And what they were able to do is they were able, within their community, where they're able to insulate themselves and build themselves back up. So that's how they passed us. Those three components were the ways that they passed us off. Not to mention that, we stopped running our race, like, because, we came out of the gates really fast, but then somehow we lost steam. And that's how we got past. It was kind of the whole tortoise and the hare type of analogy.
What you got hit?
Yo, so man, I think we gotta go back, right, and look at it. All right. So we had slavery, super impactful. But even after that, right, they went through their own sort of slavery period. When they were like being lynched and being beaten and being killed and being ripped from their families and being ported over here and treated like second class people. On the West Coast, San Francisco, because they built a lot of the West Coast. You know what I mean? It was Asian labor, right? After us, they went and got the Asians. They poured them over here. They treated them and treated them the same way as we was treated, and it was actually like further back, right? So to be honest, like sometimes, man, and I'm not saying we're doing it here, but we try to scapegoat and say somebody made us do something or somebody did something, but oftentimes it might be just us and the decisions and the things that we do, because they went through the same type of treatment and they were able to band together because they didn't fall into the system, right? We, for some reason, and I'm not saying Martin Luther King is bad, but for some reason we wanted to belong. We wanted to be in the system, and we didn't want to build independently anymore, right? We wanted to feel like, again, that we were the same, in the same boat or the same status. But they continued to stay in their lane, right? And then they also seen what they were doing to us and did the same thing to us. They opened up in the hood, right? They sold us oodles and noodles for $4 that they got for 10 cents, right? And they built their income, lived upstairs, because there's a spot I can tell you right now, on Penn Avenue. I watched them do it. They sold to the hood. They lived upstairs. Once they got their fortune, they moved out and did something else with it. So I think that they had a plan, a game plan. They didn't get brainwashed into the system, because I think for them, they understood their roots. They had roots. They had ties back. And so they weren't like, we were kind of like, honestly, our history is only started at slavery. We don't really tie everything back. It's the truth, man.
So
our history is only 400 years old.
So Leifer, I'm not trying to take your turn, but that's not accurate. Like, I think that's the so one, they weren't shipped here in mass, like in chattel slavery. So that's one. Two,
what would you define as mass? What you defining as mass?
like there wasn't millions of them boated here from their land, and so a lot of them
they came willingly.
Yeah, they came here willingly, and they became an underclass because they were able to live a higher quality of life here as an underclass than they were at where they came from. So that's one. And then two, and it was, I want to say it was during World War II. It was called internment camps. That's what I was talking about. And you were talking about on the West Coast. Yes, like they didn't come out of slavery to that. They were here as, you know, underclass citizens, and they were able to have all the rights that, you know, you get as American. But what happened was during those wars, they thought maybe these people were spies. So what they did is they did it like kind of like Hitler did, and they took them away. They took their assets and they put them in what's called internment camps. And I'm not trying to have, you know, I'm not necessarily trying to have, you know, a poverty Olympics and say that there was worse than, but it wasn't what they didn't have 400 years of it, or they didn't even have 200 years of being enslaved. And they actually were paid out reparation. They were paid more than 1.6 billion to 82,000 people. So
Sheesh.
that's the difference. Like we never were made whole.
So you saying that one payout is the reason why
it's a big payout.
flying? Yo, but how long ago was that payout?
So that was
same payout. Let's see.
I want to say that was somewhere in the 70s, I believe. So, and it says that's the equivalent to 3.5 billion. That's 3.5 billion in 2019 dollars.
I get it, but
like that's
okay,
significant.
Yeah. How much money? I don't know. You guys looking stuff up. How much money was floating around during the pandemic?
A lot.
That's play money, though.
Right? No, it's not play money. It's still relevant to that money that they got. So what did we do with the money that we received?
A lot of nothing. Well, some people did, right, but a lot of nothing. I'll put it there. Now, granted, I didn't get anything, but yeah, I wish, you know what I mean? But so what are you saying? That was our reparations? That's what you saying? That was our reparations?
I'm saying is that it's the mentality. And
I can agree with that.
I can agree with what we did with the money. You got to take some personal accountability in the way we think, and the way that if we do receive that money, would it really will we have the same impact? Because like I said, we don't really have a history. That means a lot. We don't we're Africans.
But I think that's us and them. That's why they're able to tap back into their roots and stuff like that, because they came here willingly. We were brought here not under our own control. So we were snatched away from our history and that lineage. So that's why it's not the same. And then also they were made whole. So
it wasn't, they came to work, right? But they came over to work. They was promised work. But it's not like they were paid fair wages and treated and treated like they were equals. They were treated like slaves. They were given the opportunity. They came over here willingly, but it wasn't like an opportunity, man. Them dudes were treated like slaves.
Hold on, time out. So we literally just said they came over and worked for pay, but they were treated like slaves. By definition, that's not the same thing.
Pay. No, well, okay. So you telling me people who work in those sweatshops making 20 cents an hour
we never had those sweatshops in America.
They did when they was building the railroad. When they was building railroads, it was almost equivalent to them working in sweatshops.
So think about it.
They were paid less than white people.
So which is true. So if you came over here willingly for that, what do you think was going on in your country?
I think what I'm saying is,
you know what I mean? Like, think about that. Like, you willingly came over here to be a slave. So what were the opportunities where you came from?
Or did they come over here with the hopes and dreams that they were sold, and then they got over here and realized this is what's going on?
We'll leave.
Right? But how you gonna get back? And people, if you understand,
they were sending you back. If you got out of line, they were sending you back.
They was not sending them back. They probably kill them. They probably kill them before they send them back.
No, they were sending them back.
Yeah, they was. It was called deportation. They was deporting.
They were sending them back. True.
Like if you came over here and you wasn't working, because they're like, that's what we brought you over here to be labor. So if you came over here and was doing crime and you was doing stuff, like that's where our deportation system came from. Yeah. Like This one's broken. Send him back.
We was smoking weed.
What you got, Lee? Because this should be your realm right here.
Yeah. So a lot was said here, and that was you know, it, it's impactful. You know, this conversation was one that I have all the time because I think we forget about a lot. Like we could talk about um, you know, us not taking accountability and other people coming over here and being able to capitalize in a way that we weren't able to capitalize. But like you really have to put it into the proper context because we're talking about um maybe not for everybody, but for most who have a lineage back, 300-400 years in a system where you basically were pushed out of everything, your language, your culture, your country, your statehood, your tribe. You pushed out of all of that knowledge, right? And now we're in a space where pretty much all is forgotten. All we know is America, right? So talk about the Asians who were, who came over here, voluntarily, whatever they came over. That's what, less than 100 years ago. You know what I mean? And they came over here with knowledge of self, with knowledge of culture, and they still have that knowledge and those ties to the culture. And if you look at, a lot of, even when we were growing up, like if you looked at a lot of the Asian kids that we went to school with, their parents, they were still mad traditional. You know what I mean? They still, did a lot of the things that they did back at home, and they still lived those traditional lives. So those ties were still to their homeland. So uh, regardless of whatever money that may have been paid out, I believe that was specifically to the Japanese, I believe, right, during that time. So regardless of whatever money that the Japanese may have been able to get in reparations and things of that nature, just think about the way that their cultures, their cultural identity was tied. Like if you look at ours, like back in the days pre integration, when we were successful, we had successful neighborhoods, like we had Black Wall Street, that's one of them. We had Seneca Village in New York, Rosewood in Florida. We had I think we had a settlement in Arkansas. We had one in
Yeah,
North
you had
Carolina,
Raleigh.
one in
Yeah, in Raleigh.
one in
Yeah.
yeah, one in Virginia. You know what I mean? Like, we had all these different settlements where um, the black dollar or currency, whatever the currency was at the time, circulated that community. We bought off each other. We built up each other. Even if we couldn't buy in money, we couldn't trade money. We bartered services. You know what I mean? So everything was tied into that community. Our economic stronghold was ourselves in that community. You look at in the Asian communities and the Jewish community and some of these other communities, they have the same type of uh of outlook, which is why they have that same success. That dollar circulates their community way longer. Everything that they built, even a lot of the my Asian friends and colleagues, uh, especially when I was growing up, they're going to the local Chinatown or Koreatown or whatever, and they're shopping and they're buying their goods, and money is going back into the community. So they're buying off of each other first before they buy off of anybody else. We don't do that. You know what I mean? As a whole, we don't do that. We buy wherever it's convenient. You know what I mean? And we don't have a Africa town or a black town or wherever where we can go and say, you know what, we're going to bank here. We're going to go to the hospitals only in this town. We're going to go to, the restaurants only in this town, or we're going to go there and patronize them first before we patronize anybody else. If something's wrong with the services or the goods or the labor that we're getting there, then we go ahead and we communicate with them about that wrong, and then we get them to fix it rather than post it on social media and put them on blast and say they're horrible. Don't ever go back there. I went there and the chicken restaurant didn't have any chicken, and you know what I mean. So that we're our own worst enemy in a lot of cases. So it's hard for us to have that economic prosperity and that greater outlook when we have been conditioned over the courses of decades and centuries to look at each other. I think Mr. Fulton said it, through our oppressors' eyes. So we're you know, I think it's really it does us an injustice to say that, you know, we need to take accountability. Yes, we do in some sense need to take some accountability for some things, but let's not forget, you know, the generational conditioning that was done, you know what I mean, over the course of time that literally puts things in our head subconsciously to where you're literally not, you're not making an effort to put that money back into your community or to try to empower your community. So, you know, it's just it's weird when I look at it, but like I said, I see a lot of these other cultures and stuff, and they do it, and we're saying, well, why can't we do it? And it's like we did it, and we did it successfully, and a lot of different places, a lot of different states. You know what I mean? A lot of different cities. Now, granted, every time we did something successful, it was all
They
burnt
knocked our
down by
they knocked our
some angry
sandcastle
white
down every
moms.
time.
Yeah,
Yep.
some angry white moms. Every time we got a monocule of success and we built our own, they burnt it down because they were jealous or they were mad or some pretty little white girl lied and said somebody touched them or raped them or looked at them wrong, and then they burnt the whole town down. So, you know, it's not that we can't do it. A lot of things it makes me think that subconsciously we're afraid to, because you know it's like why would you want to be a civil rights leader when all of our civil rights leaders were killed? You know what I mean? Why would you want to build your own economic basis when you know they're gonna come and burn it down? You know what I mean? So I think subconsciously there's that fear there to where it's like, man, if I do have this individual success and I do what I'm supposed to do and I stay under the radar enough, they won't bother me. You know,
Uh,
but if I start making this big hubbub, they coming to knock my ship down.
I think on that tip, the candle burns at both ends, because not only are we afraid of them coming to burn us down, we're afraid that the people that we're trying to help are dragging us will drag us down. You know what I'm saying? So it burns on each side of it. You know what I'm saying? But I'm glad you said what you said. You know what I'm saying? Because it kind of goes into the next question. Um, has interracial dating hurt our community? Hurt the Black community? Interracial marriages, I'll say, opposed to interracial dating.
Hmm. Uh, if, I'm gonna say yeah. Just because I hate to put it this way, but it is what it is. Like it creates an escape hatch to not for us to not have that nuclear family within our culture. Personally, I don't care. Like I don't care who you date and who you marry. But if we're just truly talking powernomics and we're talking group economics, yeah, I mean we probably should be mating and procreating with our own and all that. Like I've heard people say like you know if you're rich and you marry outside the community, when you die, that money goes outside the community. I get that. But I mean, just at this point in time, I mean, I heard a quote one time where it was talking about, it was like, we're always talking about, I want to say it was Jay-Z. He's like, we're always talking about, crabs in a barrel, always pulling each other down. But nobody asks, like, a crab's not supposed to be in a barrel. Like the structure that we're in is designed to kill us and to knock us down. And then when we decide to not even try anymore and we lose hope, like they're like, oh, why? But because like they lost hope, and people have lost hope in this dream of America, or the dream of I guess a Black culture that's just going to be elite. So yeah, I guess it has in some points, but I mean I really believe that it's not an all or nothing proposition, and I don't think it ever was. Like even when there was these Black Wall Streets and stuff like that, there probably was only a talented 10th that were really getting money and really living a good life. The masses of us, like it's called the bell curve theory. The masses of them were probably still poor. You know what I mean? Like, so that same group that, was poor in Black little Africa, if that's what we want to call it, and that uneducated, that undriven, that whatever, like those people are still the underclass in this society. Like they're just the way it's set up. There's going to be winners and losers in this society. And there's a certain rule and there's certain set of parameters that you have to pull yourself up in this society. And if you don't, that's kind of on you. And nothing drives that point home more than when I would travel. And whenever I would travel somewhere, an African, they're driving Uber in London, right? And the first thing he would say to me is, "What's wrong with the black people in America?" And I'm like, "Pause, wait, like just drive the car, bro." Like, but like that's kind of the thought process. Like they're like, yeah, it's hard. Yeah, they're making it difficult for you to get ahead, but you're saying there's a chance. Like they haven't given up hope. Like they're saying in other places, like they don't have the opportunity. Whereas in America, yeah, it's going to be hard. Yeah, we're maybe graded on a curve, but we're still going to actually try. And I think that's the part that, we're taking away the free will of it. Like some people just don't want to do better. And I think there might need to be, and I've said this a lot of times on this show, maybe we need to draw a line in the sand and be like, hey, man, if you're not rowing this way, cut them off.
What you got hit? What you got,
Hey,
Lee?
I'm here. Hey, man. You said about dating interracially. I think
Interracial marriages hurt the black community.
I think, man, that we really are doing our ancestors justice, our great grandfathers justice by doing what they couldn't do by sampling out the forbidden fruit. So I don't think nothing wrong with that at all, man. You know what I mean? They hold us in high regard from that move, man, because that's something they couldn't do. You know what I mean? They faced prosecution, and that was life or death. So
look, this is our problem, man. We so unserious. Yo, we so unserious.
But all right, look, we making them proud, man. Hey, but check it out. Just to kind of circle back, right? I think, a lot of the black dollar only circulates in the black community for 24 hours, right? I think it's 20 or 48 hours, right? So that means if I get paid on Friday, by Monday, all my money is gone to another community, right? I think the Asian is probably like 30 days, and the Jews I think is like 40. So we don't circulate in our own community. But the issue is again is our mindset. But we can't use that as a point like that we've been conditioned to do something, right? Because we're prototype dads. Some of us experience bad fathers, right? But it's not an excuse to continue to be bad fathers because that was introduced to us, right? We had to make a decision and say, hey, listen, I understand this happened to me, but I'm not gonna let this happen to my kids. I'm gonna do something different. So at what point do we take the accountability as black people and say, hey man, let's try something different because this ain't working for us, right? It's instead of blaming, you know what I mean, this person or saying this person got this and we didn't get it. Again, that's the black entitlement. Like white entitlement is my forefathers own this land, right? I come from the stock that owned everything, and this is why I'm in Home Depot and I deserve for somebody to put my lumber in my truck. But our entitlement comes from the fact that none of our forefathers had nothing and they struggled, and so therefore somebody should owe us something because all I ever had to do was struggle. At what point do we leave that alone and say, all right, cool, we struggled, but we did own things. We're moving in a different direction and we change our mindsets, man. Like I think it's a mindset thing. Like the fact that my grandmother owned and all her children owned a whole block in Homewood, but none of their kids owned anything. You know what I mean? So that's the mindset, right? It's generational, but I mean we just got to choose to do different, man. I think it's a choice at this point.
What you got, Lee?
There was so much there that didn't have anything to do with the actual question, but I wanna get to it all because I like where his head was at. I In terms of economics, I think yes, interracial marriages can hurt the black community, and I say that because if the black person who married um whatever, had some wealth, and then they passed away. Then that wealth, now half of that wealth or most of that wealth leaves the community and goes to wherever they're at. So I think somebody was saying something about Kobe. When Kobe passed away, I think he had a bad relationship with his mother or something like that, or
Yeah,
his
that was Dr.
parents,
Umar that
something
said
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, had a bad relationship with his parents, and his wife got all the money, and basically it's made it, sent them a little bit, back in the day. But it's like, oh, you on your own now. So now, you know what I mean? All that money is now outside of the community, so it doesn't have that same circulatory effect that it would have if you know if it wasn't an interracial marriage. With all that being said, I don't necessarily think that as an idea it hurts the the black community, because I think uh, the kids, no matter what race it is, the kids are going to be black. You know what I mean? There's just no way around it by their own definition. By their own definition, they said if you got an ounce of black in you, then you're black, right? So now now whether or not they put the money back in the community, that's a whole nother question. Because if they weren't raised in the community, they weren't brought up in the community, then they don't really know about the community. So that could also have a hindrance. But I think when we're talking about this whole idea, period, what we're talking about is group economics and how that money circulates the black community. And I don't know, like, I think that as a whole, interracial marriage is so far down the line of issues that we have with that circulatory effect of economics and wealth in the black community, that I don't think it necessarily has that big of an effect. Because once you figure out, once you start thinking about the fact that most black people don't patronize other black businesses, and then you figure, okay, when they do patronize them, all they do is complain and moan, and then they complain about them on social media and get other people to buy into their complaints. To you know a lot of those businesses might go out of business. Or when you think about what I think it was Dr. Umar who said it on one of his podcasts, that he was trying to hire black uh, uh, um,
Black contractors for a school. Yep.
black contractors for his school, and he couldn't never get the work done. And people kept asking, why isn't it built? Why isn't it built? Why isn't it built? And then he hired some white people, and then it was built. And I think he said a year and a half
Hey,
or something like that.
leave.
So
Hold on. Before you move on, I want
yes,
to say
sir.
something because you said that before, and I wanted to circle back to that. I think
Hmm.
that's a shared responsibility. Again, that's a part of the mindset of understanding and developing your own community and saying, like, hey, listen, this person is going to support me and I'm going to provide a certain service. So I'm in Atlanta, where is notoriously known for the terrible service that they provide for high dollars. You know what I'm saying? So I think that
$5.
that yeah, I think that's a mindset that has to be shared between uh the consumer and the provider. Like that's something that we have to like go back and like, I want a great service for my money, right? And I'm gonna spend my money here. I need a great service. I think that that's a part of the mindset. It's like, again, the entitlement. Like, hey, I'm a black business. You should support me. If you don't support me, you ain't real. But if you provide me with terrible, terrible service, I have no choice but to not support you. You understand what I'm saying? I think that's it. I think that's again a part of that the mindset. My bad, my brother. Keep going.
No, you good, you good. Because I think that's a part of my point too, and I think that's something that I said earlier is, instead of going on social media complaining and airing your grievances. So to be specific, man, I'll be specific and give you something anecdotal. There used to be, I don't think it's open anymore. There used to be like a black owned bar and slash Caribbean restaurant that was like right behind my house, man. I used to want to go there all the time because it was right there. It was really close. You know what I mean? I can, have my kids at home and feel good because I'm in walking distance of it. And I used to want to go there all the time because they had, decent jerk chicken and stuff like that. Cabbage, rice, and peas. Um, uh, but service sucked. You man, it would take I would be there, and I'm, typically you're having a drink, you're having a good time. You're not really too pressed on how long the food get there. But man, I order something and 2 hours later, I'm just getting my food. And sometimes it wasn't the right food, and sometimes it was cold. And I'm like, how is that possible? And then when you try to order a drink, it's taking 20, 30 minutes to even get a drink, and I'm sitting at the bar. So it's like, okay, I'm pissed off at this point. So sometimes I would just go home and leave. Just be like, whatever, man. But instead of going on social media and complaining and for everybody, or complaining in there, making it up where I can't believe, la, 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 I sent them, like, I knew they had a Facebook page. I went in there and sent them a private message, and I gave them a whole count of the occurrences, the dates, time, everything. And I was like, look, man, I want to support Black business. I want to, you know what I mean? You're right close to me, so it's easy for me to support you. But listen, man, the service was horrible. The bartender was rude. It took me a while to get a drink. It took me forever to get my food. Like, oh, and she's like, oh, well, we're doing the best we can, and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, cool. It's like it's no problem. But other people are complaining about you all over social media. I'm choosing not to use that route, and I'm choosing to come directly to you so you can make changes. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? That, I feel like that is the best way to do it, to be able to support, even though you're not happy with the service that you got. If you wanna say that you're supporting Black business and you're supporting your community, but we don't all do that. The first thing we do is we want to clout chase. We want to go out here and we want everybody to see us complaining, and then you want to get people to jump on your back and complain with you. And that's not the best way to do it, because a lot of times people are doing things, or they got employees doing things, so they don't necessarily know what's going on. So, sometimes it's, hey, let me communicate with them and hopefully they'll fix it. They didn't fix it. I don't think they're open anymore, but you know what I mean? But I tried. I tried to do my part.
I got one last question. Should we still be thinking about economics as separate cultures?
What do you mean by separate cultures? Define that for me.
Black support Black, buy Black, whites over here, Asians over here, or should we say screw it and just?
I think you know where I'm about to go. I think you know where I'm
Yeah.
about to go with this. For the record, he's baiting me. Because I've been trying not to do this whole show. You've all heard the saying, all skin folk ain't your kinfolk. I think that's the biggest thing that we got tricked with. People that don't share the same culture, don't have the same background as you, even if they have the same skin complexion of you, doesn't mean they see you as a community with them. And I think that's the biggest thing that I think goes on in the Black community. What ends up happening is, when a Black person catches a charge, is, look, Black people do a lot of crime. When a Black person gets a degree or they become a doctor, it's big up to Nigeria. It's like, wait a minute, like, no, I thought we was Black, right? Now you want to draw a line in the sand. So I do think that we need to, I think group economics is definitely still viable and the right way to go, but make sure you're teaming up with people that are really for you and really are trying to see you win, not just trying to eat off your plate and then take it back to their home base.
I wasn't even just talking about that micro. I was talking about all of it. Should we?
Well, yeah, because everybody else is playing it. Everybody else is playing it. We better play it. Yeah, if we just try to be independent contractors, we're gonna be out here just being mercenaries. So in order to truly win, you have to play the group economics game. But that's the thing. I think a lot of times we're partnering with people that aren't real partners. You know what I mean? Like, they'll come and they'll eat off our plate. They'll come and get some United Negro College Fund money and then be like, see, you Akatas are no good. You're like, wait, like, I thought we was brothers. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest thing, is we need to make sure that we are aligned with who we decide to do group economics with. And sometimes that's not even like racially based or culturally based. Sometimes it's just based morally, if y'all have the same values. And I think if we start there, I always say, like, if you make sure that your you make sure that your lawn is clean. Eventually, if everybody just did that, we would have a nice neighborhood. Instead of worrying about how are we going to fix the neighborhood, let me make sure my plot is good, and then maybe your neighbor will do so, and then it'll go viral, and the next thing you know, we have a good community versus just having, oh my God, how are we going to fix this big problem when we could just solve the micro and then worry about the macro after that?
So you're saying not only should we play it, we should play it at such a minute level that we even watch the skin folk that we're playing it with.
100%.
What you got, Hit?
Should the question again, my brother?
Should we still be thinking about group economics, like support black business, or should we just integrate and call it quits? Not call it quits. I don't want to say it like that because it gives a negativity, right? But should we just integrate?
Just assimilate.
fully?
Yeah, just assimilate.
Yeah. Ooh, assimilate. That's an ugly word. I say this, right. If we don't change our mentalities, yes, the best thing to do is just assimilate, right? But we have to have we have to push the reset button. It has to be a reset of our viewpoints. Again, like let's take the oppressor's glasses off. Hey, we're not victims anymore. We have opportunity. It may not be the same opportunity, but there is opportunity. And if so our history is 400 years old. But let's go back to the history that we have. Let's not let them write our history, but let's look at our history through our eyes and know that our people overcame a lot, right? And they had a lot and they owned a lot. And it's possible for us to do the same thing, but only, right, if we recognize that and understand that we are top tier. And we don't have to prove ourselves by buying Gucci or buying Louis. We don't have to prove our worth. That we have the worth, that we created, you know what I mean, that we were more than just slaves, that most of the things that's existing in this country is that what we created, right? And that we are brilliant, and we have the mind and the will to do more than just play football or to box or, you know what I'm saying, to shoot a basketball. Like, we're more than that. So if we really can change how we think about ourselves and who we are, then we can go back to understanding the community and understanding that, you know what I mean, we can build and create our own. We don't need nobody else. We can self-sustain. But until we figure that out, man, then yes, we might need to just keep on assimilating. But you see where assimilating is getting us. Like, a certain percentage has and the mass doesn't. You know what I mean?
There is no more mass. It's at that point. We're all the same, right? So if we assimilate, there is no poor is poor. If you got it, you got it. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying. Well, that's the hierarchy of assimilating, right? So you have those that have it, right? Those African Americans that have it, that live a certain way, that lives in a certain percentage, and then you have the others that doesn't have. You know what I mean? It's you start compartmentalizing. You know
so
what I
the
mean?
others that don't have is you're including white people at that point.
Well, we're talking. So the numbers that we're talking about is based off of blacks. Like, you should ask me a question about blacks, right? No. So it's about everybody.
You're assimilating. Yeah, you're assimilating into.
I'm assimilating.
Assimilating into the dominant society.
So if we, but honestly, we're already assimilating right now, right? We've been assimilating, but we've been being preyed on by the in the assimilation, right? So, okay, we'll let y'all come in, but y'all gonna pay 25% APR to get the same Benz. You know what I mean? I'm gonna let y'all come in, but hey, we're gonna give you these loans with balloon paint, with balloons, and you know what I mean, all these predatory loans and all these different things. But we're gonna let y'all in though. Oh, you can move over there, right? But you're gonna pay 5,000 more, you know, a month to be over here than we're gonna charge them. So that's the price of assimilation.
Gotcha.
Like, they're
so you're
letting us
saying
in.
they need to actually, like, that's what's causing the divide, actually, because we assimilated in, and then they're still treating us foul. Like, no, you're still different.
Now
He's
we're paying
100%
we're
right. You're
paying the
being
ticket.
mistreated. You're paying a
Yeah,
premium.
Yeah,
You're paying a
yeah.
premium to be
you're
part of their society
you're
because you
paying
don't have
you're
your
paying the
own.
ticket. You're paying the
Yeah.
ticket to belong. You know what I mean? Like you're paying the price of admission. You know what I mean? It's a different price of admission for you than it is for Joey. You know what I mean? It's different. And so like, why do we keep accepting that? Like when do we change that? Like when do we understand that? Then when do we change it? Like it
And then
has
we
to
go,
be
and
a
then we go
reset.
back to us, and we get a even higher premium. Buying buying a black t-shirt be $75. You be like, yo,
Not always. That's not. I think that's not always. I mean, there is a certain price of doing business, but I don't think that's always. I think that's a misconception because there are like reasonable price like black businesses. I just think like again, just like bad black fathers, only the bad businesses get the press, and the people that's out here doing their thing doesn't necessarily like the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You know what I mean? But I think ultimately we have to stop being victims or allowing ourselves to be victimized to belong, man. Like we got to change the way we think about things and how we move. And that's the only way that we can change. Like we understand, like in the 80s, all them cats dropped the ball, yo. The ball was fumbled in the 80s, yo. Like we totally took a couple steps back. And we understand that and we gotta like get back. Like we see what's going on. We see what our continuous action, if we keep going on this road, what it's gonna bring us. Like, and we need to give Balenciaga and all them other people back their stuff, right? And support what we have and build what we got, man, and stop trying to buy our self-esteem, man. I think Kanye West said it this the best.
what you got, Lee?
So, we live in a capitalist society, so there's always going to be haves and have-nots. That's the way it works. There's going to be people at the top, what I mean, creating businesses, running industries, and then there has to be workers. It doesn't work without workers. And, I mean, now we're talking about AI and automating a lot of things, and that may take the place of some workers, but you're still going to need a labor force. So you still have that. Um, with that being said, I don't know if this was the exact point that Hip was making, but I think we are assimilated right now. We're assimilated into a society and a culture where we've forgotten about uh, uh, the greater group. We've forgotten about you know uh, economics, and I don't know that when we were practicing, I guess the idea of what we call now group economics in I guess the post-slavery era, post-slavery pre-integration era. It was out of necessity. It was because we couldn't buy or sell to anybody else, so we kind of figured out how to do what we were doing already and make money off of it and create our own industries and things like that. Um, and since then we have gotten into a space where now it's just cool to kind of just fit in. You know what I mean? It's not really like trying to build anything on a bigger, larger group scale. It's more like I just want to be looked at as an equal. And in a lot of ways, we did a lot of things better than what they were able to do, which is why a lot of that stuff got burned down to the ground. We were taking some of their customers. It got to a point where we were doing things so good that we were having white folk come into some of these, neighborhoods and some of these businesses and some of these industries, black-owned industries, and they were patronizing them. So, I just think now, if we want to get to that space where, we're able to build a strong economic base, I think even then, where we might have had, a stronger economic base, we never had any political power. And I think until you're able to form a collective, you can build your economics, but if you don't have any say so in the laws or any say so in, the ordinances or any say so in anything that's going down, you're still powerless, so to speak. So you don't really have any control over anything. So I think uh first step would be to, start thinking more as a group, as a collective. That's going to be hard in itself. And then secondly, start, working on creating an agenda. You know what I mean? Creating an agenda, putting people in place, lobbying for your agenda, and vying in and basically demanding your seat at the table, demanding power, because at the end of the day, you can have all the money you want and it can circulate in your little circle. But if they stop it from going across the street, what you gonna do? You know what I mean? So I just think you know, we're not thinking big enough. It's okay to just fit in at this point. It's not okay to be at the table because if you even you look at the few black billionaires here and there, they're not, especially in the forefront, building up any, or supporting any black industries and building up. They might, throw some money to, some charities, some causes and things like that, but they're not like, let's put our money together and build this major black coalition. I haven't heard anything like that. You know what I mean? And we did our, yeah, where's the black moguls at the forefront of this conversation? Building that economic stronghold for the black community. So yeah, until
Who's
we
that?
get
Who's that
serious about
one
any
I
of
sent
this, I
you
think
earlier, man?
assimilation is the only thing.
Who's the guy I sent you earlier? I think I sent it to you too, Leifer. There's a guy who said he wanted to do all this stuff. What's his name?
John Hope Bryant. You talking about John Hope Bryant?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I met dude. We talked about it a while ago. We went to a conference and I met him. And what he talks about is, not only do we have a bad racial image, he says we have a bad racial. I'm trying to think of how he phrased it. Like we don't have any confidence in ourselves. Like, and he was like, that's the problem. Like, I mean, I think this is very doable, but we just have to get with like-minded individuals that are rowing in the same direction, and the people that aren't, go that way. And I think a couple people had mentioned that, like, we need to we need to reset and redefine who our community is and who is going to push in the right direction. So yeah, you were talking about John Hope Bryant, and that's the book I kept mentioning. That's the one I need to kind of go back. It's called Financial Literacy for All. That's the one that I need to go back and actually read. I had mentioned it a couple times ago. I just was so busy I hadn't got around to reading it.
I think I guess what he's trying to portray is kind of the same thing I was talking about was, hey man, I think we can't value their table more than ours. I think at this point we value their space and where they live and their schools more than we value ours. And you see what happened because of that, right? The HBCUs are terrible, right? And you know what I mean? Our communities that we lived are terrible, but we won't cut our grass. But if we go to up in Alpharetta, we're gonna cut that grass there, right? You know what I mean? So I think we have to view what we have as value as well. You know what I mean? We got to change who we are as people, man. We got to get back. Like I think we had it at one point and we lost it, but I think it's salvageable only if we change, man. We got to really have a change in mentalities.
I think it's hard because a lot of people were average players, right? And if you put an average player around great players, that average player will become great, or that greatness will rub off on him. But if you put that same average player around a weaker team, then that average player becomes a worse player. You know what I'm saying? So being the only one when you're only average is it's more likely that you're going to decrease instead of increase. To go with being in Alpharetta, where you go to Alpharetta and you see everybody's grass is cut, so you're gonna cut your grass. But being in your own neighborhood, everybody ain't treating their property the same. Maybe because everybody's renting, but everybody's not treating
So
property the same.
so you do the same, or are you the one
I'm
that be the example and you set the tone?
That's
the
what
problem. Like,
that's what I said. A lot of people are average. Like the people that set the tone, those aren't average people. You know what I'm saying? And most people are average, and they'll do what the status quo is. You know what I'm saying? So, um,
I also think that's a neighborhood standard though too, because and the only reason I say that is because man, living in where I'm at now, people will have their grass high, and and the only time they'll get cited is if somebody calls, code enforcement or something like that. But the code enforcement drives around every day. They don't cite people, even though they see the grass high. Somebody has to report it. But I've lived in this neighborhood up in outside of Detroit, suburbs of Detroit, Roseville, man, and there was an ordinance in, and it was like your grass couldn't be over a certain height, or you got a warning and then you got a fine. All right, there wasn't no multiple chances. You got a warning and then a fine. And they would come by every day, literally every day in the summer, and they had like this ruler, and they would literally put it up to every single lawn. Whoop, whoop, and if you're didn't meet the standard, dog, boom, fine right away. And I think, oftentimes the neighborhood sets the standard. It's not necessarily just the individual, but the follow through on
And the
the
accountability. The accountability
yeah,
is what's so important.
yeah.
Because
Like,
everybody
okay,
else is
this
like,
doesn't happen
hey,
to that.
you affect us by you
Yeah,
letting your property goes down. That affects us. Whereas
yeah,
if you're average and you're in a bad neighborhood, nobody cares. They're like, well, I'm renting anyway. So
yeah,
versus trying to come on, guys, let's all do this. It's easier to just move.
yeah.
hey, this is an old African proverb they teach at my church. It's called Ubuntu. You are because I am. So it's understanding that we're all the same. Like if you get promoted, I got promoted because we're all together. Like we're all one. You know what I mean? So if you winning, I'm winning. And I think um, if we had that mentality, that will stop a lot of what we just talked about. You know what I mean? We'll understand that, hey man, we're all in one. Like and Mo know from being in the corporate, right? If one look like a clown, we all clowns. Because that's all they view. Because that might be their only experience in real life with one of us. You know what I'm saying? And so if we understand that, like if we all look like that, then we would change again how we act. We will hold ourselves to a higher standard and hold each other to a different standard because it's all one and the same. We win together or we all lose together.
and with that said, that's another prototype dad.
But you still ain't got a new board. See, look, man, look. See, man, that's what I'm saying, man. Golly.
We
All right,
out.
y'all.
Peace.
Hey man,